Done.
Thank you, Gary. I'd just like to acknowledge Gary got me on Zoom, and is Terry Walker with us?
Yes.
Terry Walker?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Terry. So are there any apologies? And we're all at the meeting. So there being none, I'll move on to the public forum. And I'd like to welcome Shakid to speak as the first speaker. And I'd just like to caution you that it's because of the amount of speakers and the volume of the agenda, it will be 3 minutes, and so and we will ask questions at the end potentially. So thank you, Shakid.
This.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the Thames Food Waste Minimization Group. We've come together, we've spoken to before, we've come together with other organizations around the peninsula to initiate a campaign around food waste. And we're currently running a petition. We're just starting a survey across the peninsula where you can working with the resident and ratepayer associations to get around the peninsula. And I'm here mostly to just give you an update since we've been here last time. Our petition specifically calls on measures to minimize food waste going to landfill. We're asking the council implement specific measures in the next contract. And we're talking about supporting home-scale solutions like being done in Taiwāwe, the little schematic of how Taiwāwe people choose home-scale solutions and then get $100 voucher toward it. In the Waikato District Council, they run a curbside food waste collection and composting system. They've been doing it for a bit more than a year, and they've reduced food waste going to landfill from over 50% to less than 20%. And there's contact here for the solid waste manager who's super keen for anyone who wants to get in touch, and they'll give you all the information they've got and all the process they've been through. And it's just showing how simple the system is. It's pretty much a concrete bay and a little bigger transit once or twice a week. There's another system here that Taiwāwe is running at the moment, and they are supporting businesses to minimize food waste. Businesses that go into the program simply get an audit, a free audit, consultation from council, and then they can get a label from bronze up to platinum, and they can put there on their publication, and people can choose where they eat based on that. Another very simple solution is a company called Mainoki. They are starting to operate a very large worm farming facility in Mercer, and they will be telling us that they'll be able to take all the district food waste, no matter the fluctuations, and make it into a usable resource. Although we could do it in the district as well. And they are saying that they are managing quite well to reduce cost for councils. So they are, how would I say, there's a money savings in their specific process. And finally, we just wanted to note that we're aware that TCDC as it stands might need to, or it seems that TCDC is aiming maybe to sign a new contract before the strategy is finally finished. That's what we understand from staff. And so it seems to us that, and relying on contract variation to implement the later on strategy into the contract. That's what we got from the solid waste management council. And we thought that it's quite actually tricky to do something like that. It seems like council will lose a lot of its negotiation power to rely on contract variation just to implement solutions that should be brought into the contract to start with. we understand that it's not necessarily going to be actually needed a whole year for a contractor to have ahead of time the contract. So what we're pretty much saying is, if possible, we would like to see when the existing contract being extended by a few months, so that the strategy is finished before the new contract is being signed. And that's it. Finally, we just wanted to say that we're totally in support of a local contractor to pick up that whole process. And we believe there will be better for the community and produce savings for the community.
I can just ask one, thank you, Jackie. Could I just ask a couple of questions? So, we would have to cost the concrete compost bunker, and there's also a cost for land for an open worm farm.
Yes.
Just wondered what is the collection process for all this?
So the collection process is entail bin that sits in houses, just like in Toko, they empty that, people empty that from the kitchen to simple bin they have into a green willy bin, and that's just been picked up once a week or every second month. So usually it's done by the larger contractor who's collecting already. And in Ruotehu, the tracts are owned by Enviro Waste. The facility that's composting it is owned by the council.
Actually, I just had a question, because I'm ignorant about how big the Revocation district is and how many great places there are. My apologies. But would you envision if we built something similar to that, would you have one for the whole peninsula, or would you have more than one?
We haven't gone down to points. Is it better to truck it or is it better to compost it on site? So it could be that it's better to the transfer station.
Yeah.
And we understand there's enough room specifically in Thames to do the whole peninsula in the transfer station.
Thank you. Any other quick remarks?
And if I understand correctly, there's sort of some talk around the debate around composting versus worm farm. Do you think there's room potentially for both?
There is potential for both. Composting is simpler. Worm farm is easier to have product that's very valuable and you can sell it later. That's just details. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There being none, thank you. Appreciate that. Rahana Robinson.
For those of you who don't know me, I live up at the top of this peninsula, and in 2010 we made quite a bit of a ruckus around the dirty cage fish farming activity proposed for the Tairāwhe Gulf. But of course, so today I'm here because that's my topic for today. But firstly, I'd like to thank all of you for your civil duty. I'm very appreciative of that work that you do as councillors. So thank you. I'd also like to note that the former councillor and authoritative journalist over the years, that council will offer an acknowledgement on behalf of the people of the peninsula to Bill Barclay, who is hanging up his pen, but who I think that would be a very kind and worthy thing for the council to consider. So, thank you. Thin fish farming, yes, well, it's a done deal. We understand that. So there's no point in saying, there's no point really in arguing against it seriously. I mean, of course, you will in our submission. The submission period is over the summer, so it closes on the 28th of January. So that's that's potentially very annoying. But anyway, we are reworking a lot of opinion pieces that were done for the Hamilton News, Waikato Times and New Zealand Herald on what we call south rates of the sea. The south rates of the sea, as most I understand, have a number of negative effects on our environment, and they are also, incredibly critical. They provide habitat for invasive species. We've already got Asian kelp here. Interbreeding between farmed and wild stock has a potential to alter genetics. The quantities of fish meal like natural caught fish, anchovies, sardines, what have you, that are used in the fish meal to feed these farm-grown animals is a serious issue. There's a high probability that the deposition of waste and feces contaminants will lead to degradation. We know that there's all of this. We've got a person called Hilka Giles who used to work for Niwa, who then worked for Regional Council, and now she's employed by Tairua. She will tell you, one of her reports says that in order to remediate the benthic layer, it will take something like 8 years. So all of these things we know. There's a lot of stuff that's unknown. There's parasites, there's impact on seabirds, etc., etc. And when the Hawaii Gold Forum, of course, was meeting, they came out with a big report about this, and they the input from local, I think David Taiwāwe, the former jury were on this, they signed off on it. They say marine farms compete for traditional coastal marine space, which is slightly ironic given that Tairua are the people applying for this particular consent. And I really, fingers crossed, that they don't lose a lot of money in this, because there is potential for a lot of lost money, especially when you look at what the Clean Seas Australia has gone through recently. Clean Seas Australia is the biggest kingfish farming outfit in this area, and they have, I don't know if later, they've had major losses for the last 2 years. They've had major accidents with hydrogen peroxide. It's been layers of disasters upon disasters. They so they're not turning a profit at this point in time. But of course, GDP is created, which is all government's interested in, and this is a push from government, it's a push from Regional Council, and TCPC, as perhaps you know, submitted in 2010 with supported, because of course, why wouldn't you? It's supposedly creating jobs, and they will be low paid jobs, of course, in processing, and with a lot of automation out at sea. There'll be less jobs out there. Is that any questions?
Sorry, I'm going to break that down.
Okay, fine.
So do we have any questions for Reinhard around the kingfish farm area? There being none, thank you, Reinhard. Apologies for having one paid.
Thanks. Well, I hope your submission puts lots of conditions on the resource application so that ratepayers are not left without any mitigation bill. That is why I drove 2.5 hours down here today to ask for your consideration on that. Because it will be our mokopuna who will be cleaning up the mess, like with Tui Mai. So it will be on time.
Thank you, Reinhard.
Yeah.
Alice Griffin?
I just wanted to elaborate on my submission to Council on the climate change declaration and the reasons why Council should not sign this. Because what's happening with temperature and sea level rise at the moment is entirely natural. Nothing new is happening. You can see here the history of sea level rise in New Zealand over the last 8,000 years. This is the past. This is today. Sea level came up in the Middle Ice Age, rose about 2 meters higher than it is at present, about 4,000 or 5,000 years, fell down to where it is now, fell below that about 7,500 years ago, and started to rise slowly, and that's the rise we're seeing now. And the rise we're seeing now is in no way frightening. And we can see the evidence from this. This is Whitianga, an old photo of Whitianga. This is what the shoreline was like 4,000 years ago. These are the old beach lines, and they're moving slowly out to the sea. This is Cook's Beach in the old days. Shoreline moving out for 4,000 years from where they are now. A vertical shot of Whitianga, an old one. There's the sea, there's the airfield. The new is all waterways now. The new road comes into here. These are the old shorelines 4,000 years ago, moving profitably out to where they are today. And actually, the sea fell below the present level, so the shoreline was out here, and now slowly coming back in. Not fast, slowly. The record of sea level rise about 1.4 millimeters a year throughout New Zealand. These are the tide gauges: Auckland, Wellington, Dunedin. A steady, slow, gentle rise, 1.5 millimeters a year. That's Stan. Here's Dunedin in more detail. A steady rise from 1900 to present. This line here is green, is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide increased after the Second World War, which was rising quite fast. but that rise in CO2 has had no effect on the sea level rise at all. It's the same line, there's no acceleration, carbon dioxide has no effect on sea level at all. You don't need to worry about that. Okay, again, we're going to look at the evidence for temperature change. So this is when the sea level was higher, the Earth was warmer. So this is in Canada, glaciers are retreating, and behind the glaciers, under the glaciers, we're finding old tree stumps. This one is 5,000 years old. Here's another one, glaciers are retreating, tree stump sitting in a growing position, 3,000 years old. Obviously, there was no ice when it was growing, the Earth was warmer. Totally natural process, nothing to do with us. Here's one in Alaska, glaciers are retreating, exposing these tree stumps, which are about 1,200 years old. So obviously, 1,200 years ago, there was no ice. Then it got cold, the ice came and covered it. Now we're going back to that warmer conditions again. This is a situation in Norway. This glacier is retreating quite fast on mountain pass. These passes were open in the past when there was no ice, and people dropped things. Here's a Viking box with help holding beeswax candles, and they had these rock cans as markers. Now these cans were not built on ice; they were built on colored rock. There was no ice there 1,000 years ago, so the Earth was warmer 1,000 years ago, not our fault. I would suggest. My favorite, obviously, the Iceman in the Italian Alps. He was crossing mountain paths 5,000 years ago. He died. He actually had an arrow wound. He died. He was covered by ice. He didn't walk through the ice. He was covered by ice. The glacier came only now in 1990. So retreating, so we can find these artifacts. So obviously, it was warmer in Europe 5,000 years ago. It was warmer around the world 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. It's a totally natural process, nothing to do with us. There's no need, there's no climate emergency, no need for climate declaration. It's symbolic nonsense. Do not do it.
Thank you, Alistair. I thought you were going to talk to us about the night skies, actually.
Oh, okay.
The night sky. I'm quite looking forward to that. I had no idea. So, are there any questions of Alistair around this? There being none, so we'll look forward to another presentation on protection of the night sky, because I think that's really another important aspect. Thank you very much, Alistair. Appreciate it. David Yeomans, who's on Zoom. David, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. Okay. The subject that I'd like to raise is correspondence with the council on the subject of tsunami sirens. There seems to be a problem when I write on behalf of the membership of the Tsunami Sirens Silence Group and requests that they don't seem to get to council. This particular request was to ask for the council to reconsider the reuse of current siren poles, seeing that they've now been decommissioned. And the reply came back from an email, which was not expected in that manner, to say that the council had said no. We also asked for use of the land that the poles sit upon, and we were told in the name of the council that this had been refused. There is a strong contingent for sirens to be re-established on the peninsula, and people are prepared to pay for it. There is no shortage of money, and it turns to contributions to the establishment of sirens. So I'd ask the council in our correspondence, if you're going to say no, that it is done in a formal manner where you identify what part of the legislation under which the no is going to be told, so that we can present this to the group. Talking to an email that says just no gives no opportunity for discussion. There's been quite a bit of activity, and I would ask it's coming up on Christmas and we've all had a rough year. I'd ask the council to consider having a panel resurrected for the new year to talk about establishment of sirens on the peninsula. The new program that you have called Whisper is an ideal format to activate the sirens, which is part of the consideration. And that's my request. So we will continue the correspondence with the council, but there is an expectation that we do not receive emails from a person within the council employee, as in a council employee, that it does come and represent the council so it can be passed on for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and your comments and request is duly noted. Are there any further questions of David? They've been done, but thank you, David. Appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Thank you so much.
Now I'd like to invite Mike Brogan, who's also on Zoom. Mike, are you with us?
I am. Hello.
Hello, Mike.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can, and you have 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. To introduce myself, my name is Mike Grogan, and I'm here representing 2 businesses, 2 organisations, should I say. I'm the chairman of the Hāhei Business Association and the owner of Cathedral Cove Kayaks in Hāhei. I am aware I have a limited time to speak, so forgive me for reading my notes. I want to be sure that I don't miss anything. I'd like to offer input today on the proposed weighted tender process for commercial licences. My input today is based on the comprehensive report from the council meeting on September the 4th. The suggestions I offer are based on both my own experience from Cathedral Cove Kayaks and from feedback from other affected licence holders from Hāhei, namely the Hāhei Explorer, Cathedral Cove Water Taxi and Cathedral Cove Dive and Snorkel. Firstly, it's very important to be clear that we do support the changes being made to the current system and we welcome the tender process. We acknowledge that it is a tremendous privilege to operate from public reserves, and we do treat that privilege with the respect it deserves. We see the discussion today as a real opportunity and agree with council objectives to charge a realistic rate for public spaces as we seek some security and certainty with longer term leases. We believe that the weighted tender system can be a useful mechanism to select operators, but only if weighted in a fair and reasonable way. I'll now run through the categories and offer our united position. For pricing, we do agree with Tairua City Council and we suggest TCDC adopt a 15% weighting for this category. This seems a fair weighting that will ensure the best offer is put forward by applicants, but doesn't carry enough influence for somebody to be able to essentially buy a licence by way of an excessively high tender. For track record and experience, we request that this category is weighted at 30%. The reason is follows. The Hāhei businesses mentioned have been operating for a long time. The youngest is 9 years old and the oldest have been running for more than 30 years. There's been a huge amount of financial and personal investment in these companies and they've been built into what they are today through many years of hard work. It's important to note that although Hāhei Beach has always been beautiful, it has not always been busy. These businesses have grafted through the early years, both good and bad, and have now proven to be well-established operations. Please note that we do not expect that time alone should achieve the maximum score. Track record should include other factors such as safety records, compliance, accreditation, and other criteria relevant to specific businesses. We do accept that a weighting of 30% gives existing operators some advantage over other applicants, but we believe that this is justified. For the enhancement of visitor experience, we agree this category should carry the most weight and suggest 45% is a fair weighting. The reason we don't say 55% is because we welcome the addition of the cultural category as suggested in the report. The duration of the licenses is also discussed in the document, and this is vital to us. We request that the duration of these licenses is extended up to 10 years to give us certainty moving forward. Since the desired duration may vary from business to business, perhaps it can be open to businesses to suggest their license duration upon application. Multiple sites, 4 out of 5 of the license holders at Hāhei hold licenses for more than one location. We wish to clarify this is not to hold or block sites from other applicants, but merely to use as a backup option when Hāhei conditions are not suitable. Using backup option have become a vital part of our operations and allow us to operate safely. We just ask that this is considered when developing the tender system. With COVID-19 around us, we do ask that Council considers the impact of COVID-19 in the next tender applications. One option might be for applications to include provisions for poor seasons as a result of COVID. For example, if tendering for 10 years, an applicant might be able to have the rate reduced on COVID-affected years. This shows Council what the applicant is willing to pay, but also takes the pandemic into consideration. To summarise today, as the chair of the Hāhei Business Association, I represent the current commercial licence holders from Hāhei. We are immensely grateful for the opportunity to run our businesses from public reserves, and we do accept that change is inevitable in how they are governed. We have invested heavily in our businesses. We create employment, and our products and services are respected on a national and international scale. We are all Coromandel locals, and our businesses have a positive effect on the local community. We believe the tender system can work well if weighted correctly, and we ask you to please consider our suggestions. I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Thank you. My first request is a request, though. Could you please email that presentation to us?
Sure, not a problem.
That would be great. Are there any questions of Mike? There being none, thank you so much. We really appreciate that opportunity. Just see Gary or Terry. I've got nothing. I've got no questions. No. Okay. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Yes.
Right, Francis Hanade. Oh, sorry, Terry, did you have a question?
No question. No.
Okay, thank you. Francis Hanade on Zoom. Pardon? So we'll move to the next person, Tim Davies-Haycock.
Good morning. Very much for allowing us to speak. I'm part of a group of ratepayers and heads of ratepayer associations, and we're discussing the Whangapoa and Opito Bay mullox removal decision. I'm just going to share my PowerPoint if I can find it. Oh gosh, sorry. Give me one moment, please. Are you able to see this now?
No.
No, but okay. You've
have a hard copy of
been given a you've been given a printout. I understand. So very great. Thanks to Ariana for doing that so quickly. So basically the submission. It's a 4-page PowerPoint. The group of people involved are wanting to have a conversation with you about the mullox removal decision. And the key points that we're wanting to raise with you are the initially about the following of the requirements of the Local Government Act 2002. We understand from reading the Local Government Act, it promotes the accountability of local authorities to their communities and gives them a broad role in promoting social and environmental, cultural and economic well-being, and including with the democratic decision making. So the issues that we are raising about the mullox relate to public health and safety and providing practical solutions, which are all part of the requirements of the Local Government Act. We also raised in letters and emails to Councillors Fox and McLean, and also to yourself, Mayor Gowdy, for and belief is that this decision of removing the mullox which will require people who are mostly holiday house owners, 95% in the Whangapoa area and similar in the Opito Bay area, which is twice the rate of the rest of the Coromandel, will mean that they need to leave their rubbish bags out when they leave their holiday houses on a Sunday night, most usually, and when the rubbish collection is Tuesday morning. So there's a significant increased risk to human health from the vector-borne diseases, definite increased bird strike and littering. The picture there that you're seeing there has nappies, sanitary pads and tin cans, including food, and that was taken about 5 minutes after the bag was put out. So that spreads that leads to stormwater pollution, where the fetid waste after a few days sitting in the hot sun flows down to the drains, polluting both the harbours and beaches and damaging the ecosystem. And finally, the increased rodent and predator issues, which undoes all the good work of the rodent rodent
Thank you,
people,
Kim.
the rat people. Is that my 3 minutes?
It is.
Okay. Okay, just quickly, we've got a goal which gives significant cost savings for all parties. It's in the circa of about 161,000 or 46% of the cost, and it involves bringing forward the wheelie bins to Q20, Q1 22. But the major thing is that this summer we've got a significant problem, and that problem is going to be that we've got many more visitors than normal, and we need to have compactors in place. So I can email this to you. Well, you've got a copy of it, but that's our request from the Whangapo and Apito Bay Ratepayers Association. Have you got any questions?
Thank you, Kim. Are there any questions of Kim? There being none. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. This is also going to be covered by Chris Severn in the following call.
So, Chris, your turn to present to the council.
Okay, is that me? Thanks very much. Look, this has gone on for too long. Most of our residents now, a lot of them have taken up the coastal bins option of putting rubbish there. My concern also is for our little neighbour over the hill at Matapawa Bay. All we're asking for until solid bins come into place, which we hope is sooner rather than later, that we can have on the Matapawa Bay road site a compactor like you have in Kuatunu, which can operate by itself. It's solar powered. People put their $2 in, put their rubbish bags in. We will make a commitment, as you know, I'm chair of the Apito Bay Ratepayers Association, to ensure that we don't get rubbish left on the side of the compactor. We will obviously ring on a regular basis to make sure the compactor is picked up. It's very convenient for the Matapawa Bay people because it saves them having to take all their rubbish back into town. So we're looking, for Apito Bay's point of view, to have a compactor and a glass collection point. And we'd be very happy with that as a short-term solution until the 120 litre or 240 litre rubbish bins come into place, which I understand is going to be in early 2023, but we would like to see that sooner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Are there any questions of Chris? There being none, appreciate that. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
And that concludes the public forum. Do we need to move anything? I'd just like to present one other matter in the public forum. So I'll just hold on a moment. I've got to confer with my colleague. So I just thought as we begin, before we begin going into the rest of the agenda, that we'll do a good news item. And I'm very, very proud to be able to present on behalf of the staff a certificate to our CEO, Rob Williams, for his 5 years currently of service. So well done, Rob. Thank you so much. I'm trying to shake your hand as well as you're sterilising equipment afterwards. And just very proud to be able to speak to this on behalf of staff and council, the whole organisation. So congratulations. Awesome work, we've come a long way. Thank you so much. I have a little bit of good news. Thank you very much again. So we now can move out of public forum. Do I have a mover, Kelly? Seconded Martin. Thank you. All those in favour, please. Aye. Aye. Again, carried. Thank you, everyone. Items not on the agenda. Are there any items not on the agenda? There being none. Any conflicts of interest? There being none. Minutes for confirmation. So we go straight to minutes for confirmation on page 4. And so put the first resolution, can I have a mover and a seconder for the Coromandel Taiwāwe Community Board minutes? Don't move up. John, seconder. Sally, or any discussion?
We'd like to have a couple of points I wanted to raise. The first is again expressing my opposition to the change of the status of the council land to be able to have Tairua diesel generators on there. It's contrary to what the government's trying to do with this reduction. And the second thing is about the Coromandel Bank service. So we allowed for some money in the long-term plan for that, and it now seems that we're asking the community to provide that service and using that 30,000 to try to enable that to happen. It seems quite different from what we had put through in the long-term plan. I wanted to raise that.
Thank you. Any other comments around the minutes for the Coromandel Community Board? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Revocation Community Board minutes, Doug Mover, Murray, seconded Tony. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Taiwāwe Community Board minutes, do I have a mover?
Yeah, happy to move.
Terry, do I have a seconder? John?
I'll second, sorry, I couldn't get the sound on.
Okay, Gary, thank you. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. Thames-Coromandel Community Board minutes, do I move it? Robin, seconder, Sally. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Yes, carried. Thank you. Taiwāwe Community Board minute. Move on.
So
Gary.
Gary, second.
Thank you, Gary. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. Thank you. Audit and Risk Committee minutes. Do I have a mover? John, seconder. Murray. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thames-Coromandel District Council minutes. Do I have a mover? Sally. Thank you, Ron. Any discussion?
I have a comment, discussion. I put you to page 59, just to point out one thing. At 2.1, YouTube timestamp for this item, 21 minutes, 4 seconds. The next issue, which followed 20 seconds later. So that resolution, one of probably the most important we had, took 20 seconds. That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you, Gary. Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. Thank you. So we're now on to item 80, page 81, non-financial performance measures, quarter 1 results. And we have Rachel. Welcome, Rachel. Morning. So are there any matters to be raised that you'd like to bring to our attention on the quarter 1 results?
No, we're tracking well. The things we haven't achieved, the roading one was out of our control. So there were a number of injuries on roads, and the wastewater one is one we're continuing to work on.
Cool. So,
Can I just start about the roading one and be confident, it says here that if any roading issues arise from a coroner or from a police investigation, that we would then do the necessary. So what I'm trying to say is our roads
deteriorating into something else that's falls within the accident.
Yeah, through the chair, if anything comes out of any of the investigation around serious injuries or deaths on our roads, that is undertaken recently. So yeah, I'm confident that there's no issues outstanding with this thing.
Right. We've also recently completed a roading survey which showed our roads in good condition.
Thank you.
Sorry, John.
I looked at that one and I wondered about the way we measure that particular activity, whether it's correct or not. It was obvious that the roads didn't contribute in any way to basic form. And some people just got off the road for just had too much to drink or some other things happened. No responsibility or PCDC, nothing you can do to control that sort of behaviour. So I'm just wondering whether we're measuring that the right way, because we've achieved through our roads what we set out to do. Our roads are not as we. So I just wondered, you know, we'll never achieve.
Through the chair, so that's a very good point, Councillor. The challenge must be mandatory measures, and so so we don't get to choose whether we actually protect it. And so everything's stipulated about that. It's a mandatory measure, and you have to report on it in a certain way. So it is a challenge. I agree with you.
We'll fail every time, Bruce.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. All we can do is provide a bit of commentary and this kind of discussion around it. So
thanks for that.
Any other matters, Robin?
Yeah, just one thing, there's a measure of the percentage of council agendas publicly available 2 working days or more before the meeting. And it's great to see that at 100%. And I just want to thank our meeting staff because it is always very nice to get them so far ahead of the meetings rather than trying to scramble in the last 2 days to read them. So thank you.
Martin, then John.
Yeah, I just wondered about the road defects. So currently the trip has 10 millimetres to 30 millimetres. The deal with that is has been remedied within a month. And I've had several businesses in Kent complaining about the pavers that outside their shops and had people trip over them. And for them, a month of seeing people trip over and having to go out and help people up, it just seems a long time within that main street, and I wonder if there's any sort of appetite to try to make areas of high pedestrian traffic to try to get that sorted out in less than a month.
I'll jump in on that one. But yeah, so through the chair, I think the issue is that Ceres has, I think as you noted, Councillor, that 48 hours is the time frame for it's greater than 30 millimetres. 10 millimetre, 50 millimetres is fairly low, trip hazard is what I'm saying. And I think again, it is a tricky one, but it's just trying to manage our contractors and manage the cost that we end up having to pay for those contractors if we want them to be responding really quickly on every little issue. The cost is going to go up because they're actually trying to prioritise their work across the district. So this is where we've kind of landed as kind of where we think it's the best balance between dealing with safety issues and also going to get to prioritise the work across the district.
And just in line with that, while I'm not trying to do any pre-public advertising, there was an issue with one out for Manly Brooks 10 on the loose pavers, which I need to put through the system and forgot. So
I did that.
thank you. Well done.
I wouldn't expect the job.
Sorry, can I just take Terry if you wouldn't mind, and then John, and then Robin. So Terry.
Oh yes, I'd just like to make a comment that been quite a few complaints about the new contractor getting his systems in place and the amount of debris on the side of the roads, the weeds in the curb and channels that they've just sprayed and left there. So I'm just passing this on. Also, they've only got 2 mowers at the moment, so they're really struggling to try and get around to mow the lawn, and it's just going to grow into a problem when the people come on Christmas and the one-way bridges that they won't be able to get mowers from one town to the other. So there's a little bit of concern there about getting around and getting the grass that's growing pretty rapidly at the moment. So I'm just passing those comments on to you if that's okay.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. Right, now, John.
Firstly, I agree, Terry, there have been some problems with the contractors, but I do believe the staff are addressing that and we're getting on top of it. Overall, I've just taken this report overall. it's actually really quite good, given the size of the business and the organisation. We achieved an awful lot. There was only one area of concern for me, and that is our water, the amount of leakage we're getting. 43% of Thames, 40% of our treated water in Coromandel. We don't know where it's going. So we do have that issue. I think, I pray every night that it's going to continue to be our issue, that Three Waters falls over. If it doesn't, well, it's not going to be our problem anymore. But long term, I believe that we'll probably retain those, the water. I think that it'll fall over, that there'll be a change of government, and this will be our problem. So we need to look at those leakages, and we need to look at what we see as priorities in this district. I know we've got something excluded, which I won't go into, but that involves a substantial amount of money, and we need to look carefully where we spend our money and what we spend it on. That sort of infrastructure is critical to this, the ratepayers of this district. So just plant that little seed with you for later on when we go into something excluded, okay?
Thank you, John. Robin?
Yes, there wasn't one other thing. So on page 105 of the agenda, there's a table that talks about the percentage of funds distributed that comply with council's community growth criteria. And I was interested to see that in the Whakamatā area, 30% of the grant which received money. Is that, no, actually that's, no, I did, is it 30% of those grants, the 23 out of the 28, did receive money or did not receive money? No, I guess my bigger question, sorry, I should have formulated this before I come out. Why is it so out of line with the rest of the district? So all of the community boards have 100% track rate with grants that are approved meeting the criteria. And Whakamatā stands out as being appropriate. This is what I'm curious as to why.
So the Whakamatā Community Board had decided that they would take every application on a case-by-case basis. Some of those applications did not complete the criteria by not having financial statements or a budget for them, in which case they don't meet the criteria. There were others that did apply for financial assistance towards accounting programs, etc., which don't meet the criteria either because it's operated on. So the community board decided that they would still, even though they didn't make the criteria, would still give them a grant. Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions? There be none, we'll have a mover. Thank you, John. Seconder. Thank you, Sally. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Then carried. So we're now moving on to the termination review of the Cemeteries Bylaw. Rachel, thank you again. And do I have a mover? Martin, sorry?
Just preceded it. You're doing the whole lot.
Well, then we'll just receive it and then I'll just go to the resolution.
If I'm looking at the resolution, I'd like to hear an explanation of the resolution.
Okay. So we'll just go to yeah, the termination. Okay, so you don't want to remove the whole lot all at once, you like the discussion first?
Well, it says determines that the bylaw is not the appropriate way, but if you hear a little bit more of that.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yes, first I'd like to point out that in the main bit of the document, I've made reference to consultation in November and December. That was a previous consultation date. The date in the resolution is discrete dates that we want to consult over late January and February. The council has the ability to create a cemeteries bylaw under the Cemeteries Act. Most of the things you can make a bylaw for relate to how the council manages the cemeteries. So we really don't need a bylaw for the police ourselves. In terms of community behaviour, cemeteries are public spaces, and so we have other bylaws. We've also never used the cemeteries bylaw for enforcement, partly because the fines are terribly low. The Act is so old that the maximum fine you can give is £50. So that's not very cost effective or a deterrent. And also, we've used it more as an educational tool because when people are using cemeteries, it's council's way to work with them compassionately as opposed to violence.
So can I just ask the question that the bylaw though does allow us to control and set the standards for the operation of them, does it not?
Yes, but we also have other documents such as the asset management plans and procedure documents that set out how we manage those areas. So we don't really need to actually have an enforcement tool like the bylaw to achieve that.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
And if we don't do anything, then that's just going to be revoked automatically, isn't it?
Yes, but doing it this way gives the community a chance to have a say as opposed to an automatic revoke.
Yeah. So we have to do something to either, so we go out and vote, because otherwise it's going to be revoked in February.
Yes.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, these revocation is quite intriguing. This one only came to bylaw in 2015, so probably in your guys' time. So there's a need. There's obviously a need seen for that to be there, and now 7 years later saying we don't need it. It would be a cost to put it there in the first place. It's going to be a cost to remove it, and it's just a little bit confusing for me, to be honest with you, as to why we're doing that. If we don't need it, I'd be all up with just letting it lapse. Well, I know it's not best practice under the Local Government Act, but it's at no cost to this council. If in fact decide we don't need it anymore. I have no problems with it being. There's obviously some debate about the requirement for it, the need for it back in 2015. 7 years later, 6 years later, we're saying we don't need it.
I think it's like a lot of advice we get, conflicts and it grows and gets better. I take it from what Rachel saying that this can be handled a lot of other ways. So I accept the resolution.
Terry, did you have, oh, sorry, Terry,
Yeah.
did you?
Yes, I got a couple of questions. I think this is, I agree that the review is worth doing and going through the consultation process. Just talking about the consultation process with the public, you're not doing any meetings. It's just all online or through communication. Is that right?
That does say
Sorry?
yes.
But I see that you're prepared to meet with iwi. I didn't wonder what's the difference. Why would you sit down and meet with them and not have an open discussion with the public? Because there's quite a big concern, you know, with over cemeteries. They're quite a personal thing, so there'll be an interest about it for sure.
Terry, we can look at the different forms of engagement as part of that after as well, so we will take that on board.
Thank you.
Sorry, Sally, you're
no,
yeah, just your query, John, I think there has been several, there was a Parks and Cemeteries Acquisition Plan in 2018 and also Cemeteries Activity Plan in 2018, so it could well be that they kind of negated the need for the final.
I can just get that argument, and I guess I'm definitely not in favour of enforcement around cemeteries. Education is definitely the best way. I just look at the process and the cost. Okay.
okay. Any other questions or queries?
My comment was just about that this covers, it wouldn't cover closed cemeteries, because for us living in a heritage town, I'd get more issues with closed cemeteries and maintaining them, etc., than current working ones. So does this cover the closed cemeteries like Portland and things?
Well, the current bylaw would cover some people's behaviour on public cemeteries, but that's also, those areas are also covered by people in public places, littering and just general New Zealand laws.
Okay, Gary, did you have anything you wanted to raise? No. So,
No, I found the button. I found the button. No, thank you.
okay, no, it's all right. We appreciate it. John Mover. Thank you, Sally. John, second it, Murray. There no further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Now we have page 165, the proposed district planning variation 3, Taiwāwe catchment structure plan. Welcome, Bruce. And are there any matters that you wanted to bring to our attention? Or?
No, this is a fairly straightforward report. It's the process we have to undertake at the RMA. Once the independent hearing commissioners make their recommendation, that recommendation comes to council for council to make a decision on the variation. The full recommendation report from the independent hearing commissioners is attached to the staff report. And if there's any questions, I can touch base.
Thank you, Bruce. Are there any questions for Bruce? Anybody have any questions? Do I have a mover? Thank you, Tony. It's second now.
I'm second because the commissioners have done the work, they've heard the evidence, they've made the decision. I have no ability to do. So I'll second it. Yes.
Thank you, Sally. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Again, Gary, thank you. Deliberations petitions on the local government leaders climate change declaration, page 220. And we can take online. Thank you, Kate.
Hey.
So, are there any comments you wanted to make before we put the resolution?
Yep, I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware we did receive a number of submissions using a third-party form. That form had a third page which asked submitters to indicate or tick a number of additional actions that they would like to see council take. That's outside of the scope of the decision that we're trying to make. But that information is included in the summary of submissions from page 229, and it's also been forwarded to the Resilience and Sustainability Group. The other point I just wanted to make is the resolutions. It looks like there's quite a few of them, but it's set out with all of the options are included in the resolutions for you to select. So resolution 3 is includes 2 bullet points for the to agree or not agree. And then resolution 4 sets out that supporting text to go with that decision. So the first 3 bullet points, it's a case of the options there are the 3 options that would support or go with a yes decision or to approve, and the second 2 sets of bullet points are if it was to not approve. So that was just the 2 things I wanted to highlight.
Thank you. And so I think in terms of just clarity, we'll take the resolutions one at a time, so that it gives everybody.
Can you just help me with what page that is?
221. So if you look 221, so if I put the first resolution.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah.
I've written parliamentary judgment, and I still cannot get in my own mind whether it's a legally binding document or it's not a legally binding document. It's written stating it's not a legally binding document. Palmer J, I thought was very great. He didn't, to me, he didn't say whether it was legally binding. Obviously, the action group consider it a legally binding document. Have we got anything more to do on that, please?
No, but the point that came out at the end was that the judge gave a direction in which we were obliged to meet as a council. So we're doing that as a council.
I understand that, but for me to make the decision. There's 2 things that I really am struggling with this, and I've struggled with it. Is one, I want a definition of whether it's legally binding, and if it is, then what are the financial implications for council? And in my own mind, I can't get that resolved.
And if I can add that would be one of the documents. This one is where I was when the thing first came up. And for me, I have always seen this as a politically motivated piece of work.
and they ain't answered. So when we get to this, I will not be approving you to sign.
Right, okay.
My position on that one.
And my position is that we're going through a process directed by a court. I will make my personal decision, which, you know, was the same as what it was before, and then we get on with the importer's work on whatever the council's going to do around reduction and litigation. So to me, this is a process that we're moving through, and it's an important process.
Thank you, Dylan. Martin?
I'd just like to raise my concerns throughout this process. The comment has been a whole lot of the reports and things that we've had about calculation down the target of legal action, the legal engagement with the declaration. And yet in the 4 years since a whole heap of other councils signed it, there hasn't been any legal acts taken against councils that have signed it. And to be fair, if we're not seen to be giving the appropriate importance to climate change related work, then I think it's fair that we could be taken to task about that. So ever since I've seen that in there, I haven't been happy with it, but it continues to be in all the reports we've seen. But yeah, I see that as something that shouldn't have been in there because it's never been quantified. I've never had anyone show me court cases that have been taken against other countries.
Thank you. Any other comment? Tony?
Yeah, it was what Martin's comment about other councils. Other councils didn't sign it. Other councils never got to see the document. Other councils had the mayor or some other official sign it with no reference. Councils in our own region never went before a council. The mail came in, someone signed it, sent it away, and the elected arm, in many cases, simply didn't even know the document existed. So it's not right to say other councils, because council is what's in here. That's the elected arm and the appropriate staff. So, yeah, it's nice to say they signed it, they didn't, and so that is a fact.
So do you have figures about which councils didn't read it?
No, I haven't. We know anecdote from ones they did. So I know the hierarchy didn't go to the council. I think as we went down into the Tesla, most of it did not go to the council. And that was the issue. But it was signed by unilaterally by a few meetings.
And in some instances, not even read before signed.
I'd like to object on that, but you, Tony, have recently said that this process that all of the other calls that you have implied that a lot of the other councils didn't really understand what it was they were signing, and that we are somehow different in our understanding of implications. And I would really like to object to that because I really don't feel, Tony, that your statement is correct, that it arrived on somebody's desk as the mayor, they signed it and didn't really know what they were doing. I'm sorry. That's not okay.
So let's just stick to the fact that we have some resolutions that we have to address. Right. So we need to address those, and those decisions are there in front of you. Murray, then Terry, and then Gary.
Well, I think going back to this discussion, I think it's a very important point. Is it a legally binding document or not? And Robin just said a lot of them signed it, and they did, and it was said on the document it's not legally binding. On the actual document. Now, Palmer J, when he gave his judgment, I believe left it very draft. So why would an action group take it to High Court if they didn't want a binding document? And I believe this is a total business. And I have a real problem with this because it's more a legal argument than a climate change. And I'll come out and support, yes, we should be doing a lot of that climate change. No problem. But I have a real problem with this. And this is where the dilemma is, because the two are getting into me. And I totally understand where you're coming from in straight climate, reflect that and understand it, and agree with you. But the other is another side to it.
And the County Climate Action Group themselves believed it to be a binding document.
That's my problem.
But Terry, and then Gary.
Yeah, well, it's just been to a judicial review and it's cost us some money. We've had some guidance from the court. They said go out and go to the people who elect us and give us their decisions. They've given us that decision. We need to make those decisions and move on. So I support putting this up and before the councils and making a decision. And it's pretty clear which it should be. So that's what I feel.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Gary.
Yes, well, I should say the thing that persuaded me finally to stand for council, because I didn't want to stand, was the fact that the performance I saw with this council and refusing to sign the declaration. So I then decided I would stand for council, even though I was reluctant to do so. I have to say it sounds like the same drum is being beaten by Murray and Tony that was way back at the beginning. The short answer is that it's been a very, and let me just say that there's been, I was amazed that when we came into council and the majority of councillors wanted us to get this declaration done, that the intransigence still continued from the mayor. And in the end, all these court proceedings have cost us over $145,000. Now, I don't think the ratepayers realise that's what's happened. We're now back to where we should have been, and it's quite clear that on page 228, the one in the middle, the council's preferred option is certainly clear. I support that, and I presume others will as well. So we just don't want to keep beating drums on this, because the end result is we as councillors need to respect the decision of our ratepayers. We didn't respect it last time. When before I became in council, it was a majority against. New councillors came in. We wanted to have this done. It was ignored, and we went through this incredibly expensive exercise that the ratepayers have had to pay for. So that's my bit on it.
Thank you, Gary. Martin. So we begin with the resolution. The first one is, can I have a mover and seconder for resolution 1 and 2, please?
Yes.
Move, Robin, seconder, Tony.
No. Yeah, received and submitted.
It's just received. Oh, for 1 and 2. All those in favour for that?
Aye.
Again, carried. Resolution 3. After consideration of the submissions received, either agrees to approve the mayor's signing the local government leaders climate change, or does not agree.
I move that we agree to approve the sign.
And I'll second that.
So Robin's moving the mayor to sign. I'm paraphrasing the resolution, and that's seconded by Terry. Is there any further discussion? There being none, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. Against. So, and I'd like mine recorded, please. And so the majority.
Wanted to count the box.
Yes, please.
Pardon?
Not worried whether it's recorded or not.
Sorry, what was it?
I said I'm not worried whether it's recorded or not.
Okay. So now that's the resolution. So, Kate, we just.
From resolution 4, it's selecting one of those 3 bullet points. The preferred option was the first bullet point there. And that's what's been indicated by submitters as well as the preferred option.
Thank you, Kate. Who's moving?
I'm moving resolution 4 with the first bullet point. Martin was seconding.
So you're moving. We're now on to item resolution 4.
Yes.
And Robin, you're moving that?
Yes.
And who's seconding that? Martin. And it's the first bullet point.
Yes.
I'm just making sure I'm being clear.
No, absolutely. That was the council's preferred option.
So that's cool.
So that's the council agrees with the guiding principles of action.
Yeah.
We've got a mover and seconder for the first bullet point of item 4. We're now opening that up to discussion. Martin.
At the risk of sort of throwing a blind there, and I wonder whether people are happy with saying ambitious climate change work program, or whether we do want to put the word emission reduction in there as well. I'm happy either way.
So to emphasise the admissions side of it as well as the mitigation in case we get caught. So what have you changed it? What would you say?
We've already got the word including with the resilience group in there. Ambitious climate change and emission reduction work program. That's your word.
I'm happy with that. Right.
Is it ambitious?
Well, it needs to be.
I think it would be ambitious.
I just want to say, whilst I voted against the first resolution, I will vote for this resolution because I believe this resolution is absolutely correct. And I only voted the first one because I do not know the legal and financial position.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify.
Gary, did you have a comment that you wish to make?
I'm happy to follow the resolution that's been put forward.
Thank you. Just that you got your hand up. Terry.
Oh, I must get rid of it. Sorry.
I was just saying a little bit be careful about using the word ambitious with the emissions and everything like that, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where we can't step over the line in terms of our commitment and not the money to do it. So just bear that in mind. And I'm happy to listen to the resolution.
John?
I must admit, I agree with Terry on the word ambitious does sound like we're going to go pretty hard on that, and the school is in doing so. So I do have some concerns about that word ambitious.
So then, any of the recommendations that the resilience group put forward will go forward to council, and the ambitiousness or financial things will come up. Yeah, this is not giving a cut to do whatever we want.
So it's a really bad way to wordsmith resolutions on the hood, but if I was putting my pens within, I wouldn't have including the work. I would say something like we develop an ambition through the work, because I think that committee at the moment lacks mana in the structure of this organisation, and I think for it to actually have enough funding and mana to do its work, it can't just be including the work. To me, that is our vessel at this point in time to do the work. So I would flip that sentence around and I'd say through the work of council and other, because I think that it's a nip-on at the moment.
Agree, because it is a working group controversy at the moment. But the thing about the word ambitious that to me is that we went out for our consultation with the word ambitious in it and people agree with us. So I think at this point, we have a mandate to keep it in.
My views of them is the others.
Well, there you go.
Sure.
So there were what, hundreds of submissions? 100 submissions, 90% or 94%, I think, was actually. So could I take, has somebody actually taken down the multiplicity of wording changes here?
Yes, it's what does it say? Because I can't read it.
So we can't read it. Could somebody read it out, please?
If council agrees to approve, council agreeing the guiding principles and actions in the declaration.
Can I ask you to tip your mouth so we can get a bit more diction?
Council agrees with the guiding principles and actions in the declaration, and council will continue developing an ambitious climate change and emission reduction work program through the work of council's sustainability and resilience group.
Right.
Do we need to remove and thingy that, or?
Happy to.
So the mover and seconder are happy with the rewording?
Can I make a point?
You're not going to take it, you know.
Well, I'm just pointing out that it can't be just the work of the committee. It has to be a living part of the whole of this So I'm just, the problem was wordsmithing on the who, because you get unintended consequences. So I'm pointing that out, that it's not ideal.
I guess the announcement is that group may well recommend to council that emission reduction. Policy.
No, I can see what Sally's saying though, and so we're going to go with, we've got to right now. We won't add anything else, but I'm just, yeah, it could have been, let's try it, but that's okay. We'll just go with it where it is right now. And so.
Sally voted for it.
So I'm now going to any further discussion, but not on the wording, please. Okay.
So can I ask, is what I'm seeing on the screen here is the words that we're talking about, is that right?
That's right, Terry.
Okay.
Are you happy?
Well, I agree with Sally, actually. It doesn't run right for me, but let's pass it and then we can fiddle around with the words if we need to. But yeah.
Nice law.
If anyone got any suggestion about so that it's not just siloed into one committee, I'm worried about that.
I think the original word actually goes, including the work of the council's sustainability and resilience group, actually allows it to be broader and opens it for others. Where when you limit it to through the work,
right,
you say through this action, including the work. So it launches the working group. Again, Robin's point is it is just a working group. It's not actually a committee council. And it will always need to come back through council on that structure.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll go back to
Hang on, it's important that you're really comfortable with the wording that you're wanting to approve.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to change it back to the original wording, it's up to the mover and the seconder. But it is important just to take that time to get it right. Can't get it perfect, but just to get it reasonably right.
I just want to emphasise the number of that working group, if it needs to be done. So I will go back to the original people.
So to the mover and seconder, which wording do you want? The original or this one?
No, with
the current wording on the screen.
So what we've included here, the only thing that's different is the words and emission reduction. Yeah. So yes, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Right, we're all good to go now? Yes. Everybody happy with that? Okay, then I shall put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Again, who was that? Who? Oh, sorry, I thought you said it. Okay, against, and I'm going to abstain. Thank you. Now that means we go down to resolution 5. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So,
I'll move.
So move Sally, do I have a second it, Martin?
How will we terminate it? Does this say that staff feel that we have followed that process?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Right. They're just confirming the process that we've been through to get to these resolutions.
Cool.
So any discussion about that? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carry, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're moving right along to page 320, the Tairua Skatepark. So do I have a mover?
Yeah, I'm happy to move this.
Good on you, Terry. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Second, Gary.
Oh, sorry, yes. I'm just looking for it in the book.
Okay, thank you, Gary. So we have a mover and we have a seconder. Eileen, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I'll take the report as read. We do have representatives from Barrett, Adele and Joss, if there's any questions that the councillors would like to ask.
Are there any questions or any further discussion from council?
I've just got one query in terms of I absolutely get the assessment criteria and just checking that for the sites that you haven't shortlisted, have you used that assessment criteria or
all the other sites?
Or the other sites? So how did you decide that, you know, that site didn't get on the shortlist? Did you use that assessment criteria or a different assessment criteria?
Did you understand the question? So the question was, with all of the sites that were brought to your attention, was the criteria that you've identified here used against all of those sites to arrive at the final selection?
No, so the answer is no. For most of the sites that haven't made the shortlist, there have been previous assessments done of those sites and previous reasons that have been provided why they didn't ever make a shortlist. So those reasons were tested and found valid, and the sites weren't taken up. The new sites, they basically failed some initial discussions. For example, either they didn't meet the 700 square metre site minimum requirement, or there were specific things that are set in their criteria. So the coastal sites, for example, in terms of sand and wind, but they were not assessed overall, but each site was assessed based on what elements were specifically relevant to that site.
And that's not an unusual process for here. I suppose I'm just extra sensitive due to the sensitivity of this issue that everything's covered.
Yeah, that's not usual. If we thought that there was a valid reason or any question about having a shortlisted site from the long list making the shortlist, we would have done a much more in-depth assessment. None of them even got near that point.
Thank you.
Good clarification. Thank you. Terry, did you have a comment?
Yes, I have a question. Just really around the 700 square metre requirement. I see Corey Park is talking about 500. Are you talking 500 square metres at Corey Park? You're not?
No, the 700 applies to every single site. If it didn't meet the 700, it didn't make the shortlist.
Does Corey Park meet that requirement?
Yes.
It does, okay, because somebody questioned me yesterday about it and I wasn't sure, so that's good. Thank you. I think your process to date is very clear and it looks very professional. So congratulations to date, what you're doing. And let's hope the consultation period gives you the answers you want. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Terry. No, I think any further comment? There being none, thank you very much to you both for Vero, and I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carry. Thank you. So we'll take one last item, 352, the lease with WINTEC, and
I think this makes perfect sense to us here. The last 2 years, I think,
yeah,
good. And then we'll be clear at that point, and they will be clear, I think, about what we want to do with that site. So I'll move it. I'll second that.
thanks, Sally. Seconded, Robin. Any discussion? Okay, look. So there's been no further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carry. Look, we're going to do one more item.
Oh, yes,
So that John can go. And then the next item, which is the proposed revocation of Barrett Road. Do I have a mover?
I'll move.
Tony, seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sally. Any discussion? There be none.
Hold a sec. Is this the one that I'm just jumping through. Is this the one at Tairua?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. All good. All good.
And I think that is removing the reserve status, and then we have to work out where to from there. But this is one of a lot of questions.
So that being the case, the options around around what would happen with any fundraising, that is a decision to be made later on. This is just.
But maybe until it's not a reserve, we can't even think about selling it, and then the fact that it's got complications further on, I think is still further on. Yeah.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, any further discussion? There being none, put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. So now we're going to break for morning tea, and they will come back at 20 to 11. So we've got